Well, let me turn my.
Uh, a very good uh, afternoon to all our viewers today. We have an impact entrepreneur with us who is passionately working on circular economy with his initiative Rain Ecosystem. He's a business leader and expert of circular economy. He has worked all over the world, including Middle East, and with the Indian companies, with European companies. But he's based out of US, and presently he's working on circular economy with biochar with his brand Green Ecosystem. He also has a not-for-profit, and let us all welcome Jason Dodier, the co-founder and the CEO of Green Ecosystem. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, thank you, Harsha. And just correction, co-founder and chief commercial officer, my
Wow.
great friend of 20 years that we studied undergraduate together, Ryan Letourneau, holds that role. But, these roles, you do whatever you can to make the startup go forward and be successful. But I'm really grateful to you for having me. It's good to be here.
Thank you, Jason. It's an honor to have you with us. Now, you have worked for a decade in the corporate world, including Schneider Electric. What led you to found Grain Ecosystem and Fountainhead RI?
Well, it's been a really interesting journey. I've been very fortunate, Harsha, that I got the chance very, very young in my early 20s to live outside the United States. And, different places brought in perspectives. They give fresh insights, new ways of solving problems, and they really challenged me to break out of old habits. So for me, it was during the financial crisis. Some of you might remember that time. And I really wanted to go work in Europe coming out of the US. And by the grace of the opportunity at hand, Schneider Electric actually happened to acquire the company I was working for in Rhode Island called American Power Conversion. And through very unique kind of networking and always raising my hand for tough problems, and I was trying to learn French at that time, I got connected to one of the leaders incoming from France. And just by hearing my story and what I was hoping to do, he connected me with someone in his network in the UAE, based in Dubai. And they took a chance on me. And the really cool thing, Harsha, is by being there, I got exposed to their access to energy program. So this is really important. I think your viewers and your community that aren't familiar with it should hear a little bit, because this was an initiative launched in 2011. And the goal is access to energy is a basic human right. And we basically went all over Africa, India, Middle East, underserved communities, and helping them to really improve their access to energy, off-grid solutions, mini-grid solutions. We were removing kerosene lamps in India. And everything we did, Harsha, was focused on supporting sustainable development and aligning with, I think, UN SDG 7 to ensure reliable and modern energy for all. And through this process is really where I got hooked on circular economy. I was joking with a friend of mine recently, but I got exposed to biochar actually in 2010. I filed it away. I thought it was really interesting, very intriguing. But funny enough, that would lay the groundwork later on for what we are doing today. And I'll go more in detail into how grain was formed. But I think that's important for your audience. I advise everybody, especially in your 20s, when you're younger, to get up, to see the world, and to travel. And that also drove the co-founding of Fountainhead, Rhode Island. So funny enough, Rhode Island is my home state. It's the smallest state in the United States. It's an incredible state, definitely leading the charge when it comes to environment and energy. Offshore, first to do an offshore wind farm off the coast of Block Island. And what I saw when I would travel the world, and when I lived in France for many years as well, I met incredible founders and entrepreneurs like yourself, and all of them were looking to establish some kind of a presence in the US. And Boston's a great hub, New York City's a great hub, San Francisco, as you know, is the Bay Area is beautiful, but Rhode Island's got so much to offer. So what happened, to keep it really short, and I can answer any questions you've got later, but to keep it really short and simple, these individuals were coming to the US, and I would connect them with our commerce department in Rhode Island. And at that time, and this is a long time back, 2013, 2014, they had a suboptimal experience. And they'd go, they meet with folks typically that were a little out of date and out of touch. They had never lived or traveled internationally, and they weren't able to really think outside the box in terms of this particular sector. So I brought together friends of mine in different verticals, healthcare, financial literacy, sustainability, to try to give them a really immersive experience in Rhode Island. Fast forward, that ended up working really well. And in the very early days, we also said, Harsha, how do we help people? We can't write big checks, so what can we do? So the early days of Fountainhead, we offered free services, free legal, free accounting, free marketing and sales. And that's how we really scaled to become the organization we are today. And I'll go more again on grain and what grain is, but that's kind of really a lot of the origin for me was the travels internationally and that kind of exposure to unfamiliar environments to really enrich my problem solving and ways of thinking.
Thank you for giving all the brief and the background. Now, when we had a discussion, I recollect that we also discussed on net zero and how grain ecosystem enables the companies to reach their goals. Would you like to share with us some case studies and how does it really function?
I'd be honored to do that. And just for the benefit, because I never assume anymore that everybody knows what net zero is. And net zero is really when you're balancing the amount of greenhouse gases emitted in the atmosphere with amount removed, such that no additional gases are added. So essentially, you're really balancing things out. And this is where obviously biochar, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later, helps achieve net zero because it sequesters carbon in things like soil or concrete or as a water filtration use case to prevent the carbon from re-entering the atmosphere. So I'll go more into detail there, but that's the essence of net zero. And grain, to go to our origin story, so grain was born out of a challenge called a Dare to Disrupt challenge that was led by Schneider Electric. The whole goal of this challenge was to find the next billion-dollar business. There were roughly 250 teams, Harsha, that entered from all around the world. I mean, some incredible ideas out of Asia and Europe and US. And our thesis at the time, along the lines of net zero, was how do we help with scope 3 and the value chain? So you've got, and we're going to talk more about these kind of companies later, but these businesses have immense waste. But they also work with a lot of people in communities across India and Southeast Asia that play a critical role, whether they're farmers or sugar mills or lumber mills, etc. And grain was created to help these organizations really to demystify their processes and think through, what can I do with my waste? Can I create carbon credits? How do I pick the right technology via pyrolysis or gasification? This is when you're heating up an organic waste at a very high temperature in the absence of oxygen to create an output like a biochar or a wood vinegar that can have economic value. So how do you optimize resources and encourage collaboration? And that was really the goal of grain. We were honored to win that challenge. We got early backing from Schneider Electric Ventures. I am a big fan of corporate venture. I think they can really help move markets very, very quickly, as we're seeing with our work. But at the end of the day, grain is leveraging AI and machine learning and carbon experts to simplify project development and really accelerate financing, accelerate carbon certification for waste to energy and carbon sequestration projects such as biochar. So that's really the essence of kind of how we're looking at net zero, Harsha, and how grain is really trying to equip businesses with the tools to reduce emissions, enhance sustainability, and then ultimately meet their ambitious net zero commitments under the Paris Agreement or under SB 253 and 261 like the state of California has.
That's very interesting. It would be very good to know what kind of industries are you targeting and the geographic locations possibly.
Industries are key because it's all about scale. If you think about the core ones, though, the ones that really come to mind for us today is, food and agriculture, and then CPG, consumer packaged goods. I mean, these are the cornerstone of the global economy, and they are, for all intents and purposes, vital pillars that provide essential goods and services to people all over the world. And if you break it down, I'm going to go more in detail. But these are companies that have large scale, either food processing facilities, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll talk more about this when we discuss use cases, sugar mills, timber mills, dairy farms. And to give it more perspective for your audience, companies that have these kind of folks in their value chain at large capacity are organizations like Nestle. You think about Nestle, 20 billion tons of coffee byproduct waste go into landfill every year. So Nestle has a lot of cacao waste, coffee waste. They're working with farmers, as you're very familiar with, across Africa and India and South America. And they're already doing some work within their Nespresso division to play around and sample out biochar. You've got companies like Unilever that are producing organic waste from food and personal care products, and they've got a whole food division. Pepsi, for me, is the gold standard. Pepsi was on the front page of the sustainability section of the Wall Street Journal. They've got hundreds of sugar mills and agronomists. They have potato processing facilities and other food manufacturing facilities. Tyson's Foods is another company. Organic waste, poultry litter, chicken litter, how to convert that cellulosic waste into valuable byproducts like bioenergy and fertilizer. And then another one I'll flag too on the dairy side is Danone or Danone, depending on where you are and how you pronounce it. Another great French company that is leading in dairy and plant-based product manufacturing. And I think at the end of the day, and this is part of the work that your incredible organization is doing, the rise of eco-conscious consumerism and changing regulations around sustainability are prompting these companies to innovate in terms of material sourcing, waste management in such a way that we've never seen before. And that opens the door for companies like ours, like Grain, to come in and partner with large organizations and institutions like Schneider and like yours on the educational side to really go drive speed and scale, not just for pre-existing businesses, but also for businesses that are up and coming, like on the bioenergy and bioproduct side, companies like Enviva and LanzaTech for sustainable aviation fuel. Enviva is one of the largest for industrial wood pellets. You've got Neste, which is a producer of renewable diesel. So these are all the things that we're watching and engaging because these are the byproducts that are going to move this space forward at scale.
That's very interesting. Now that you've taken names and you mentioned about case studies, we would like to understand how grain ecosystem has made the project carbon neutral and fundable.
Yes, and I will send you some videos for your audience because one of the things we're really adamant on doing is getting on site, learning from people in the field, and creating content to help others so that they can replicate this and really understand the scope and scale. So I'll give you an example. This is public information. We really love working with sugar mills. The byproduct waste of a sugar mill is something called bagasse, and you'll see it in some of our videos. I'll never forget the first time I went on site to this particular sugar mill. They have something called Mount Bagasse. It's 4 million metric tons piled up to the sky. You can see it from space. And what's fascinating about it is a lot of people, Harsha, they start with a waste problem. So in many cases, they've got all this waste. It's eating away at their land where they could be productive and growing more crops. But in addition, they're being faced with a major economic problem in terms of they have to pay tipping fees to get rid of that waste. So what Grain will do in a case like that is Grain will come on site or Grain will allocate access to our tool. And that developer would get to see, okay, based on the amount of feedstock I've got, what is the best technology to pyrolyze or gasify this at scale? And we try to build out a scale plan, which is really important. I think one of the things that made us ultimately quit our jobs to create this company is we saw so much struggle around the business case and the economics. I spent a lot of time in my career financing and developing microgrid projects. And I worked on some very large ones like microgrid, the Terminal 1 here at JFK, and fleet electrification projects. It's really important you have the economics right. So with Grain, we help you understand how much money do you actually need to unlock this project. So we would go to that customer, help them pick the right technology, help them build the capital stack, help them think through the carbon economics. We're very, very big on maximizing non-dilutive capital. So as I mentioned, I'm on the steering committee, the markets committee for the U.S. Biochar Coalition, which is the industry-facing group that works with federal and state governments to think through biochar policy. We do a lot of work with our friends in the EU as well. And that's important because there's so much grant and incentive money out there. You've seen it coming out of COP28 in Dubai, where I used to live, the Loss and Damage Fund. I'm talking to people all the time to understand. I wasn't in Baku, but COP29. So we're helping people think through the capital stack. And then grain outside of that is helping demystify the carbon methodology. So understanding, are you eligible for carbon credits? What is the best scenario for you? And then we have an operations 360 view, Harsha, that reports back to investors. It protects the integrity of the cash flows. And ultimately, we're trying to drive down costs and increase the speed with which these projects can happen and make it easier for capital allocators to invest in these projects. And we're also doing things like project design documents as well to make that process easier for farmers and aggregators that are looking to do biochar projects. And this sugar mill is a great case study and example of one where we've been able to drive great success. And we're hoping to continue to replicate that across all the different use cases I just described.
That's very interesting and intriguing. So if I may understand that when grain ecosystem intervenes, it consults the company on the best possible technology, followed with what would be the capital cost versus benefits, and followed with integration, adaptation of the technology, and ensuring that how they could be fundable for the carbon markets.
Exactly. And I would rephrase it a little bit and say we unlock value for the teams of the people that use our tool. So grain should be the core digital tool in their toolkit. We do assign customer success leads to our customers to ensure we're looking at blind spots, we're stamping these projects. Integrity and transparency is really important. Projects don't get published to our grain investor view unless they've gone through a rigorous process. But the goal of grain is really we're providing a best-in-class digital tool that either consultants or corporations or farmers can leverage to unlock their business opportunities. But we do leverage human capital. You don't just get on grain and not deal with people. You are getting access to leaders and people who have deep expertise, especially when it comes to biochar in understanding carbon sequestration type of biochar projects.
Perfect. That sounds great. Now, IICSR is a dedicated platform to build responsible business leaders. What subjects do you think we should or we could curate to train the present and the future manpower requirements in businesses?
Well, I spend a lot of time being reflective about this because I'm somebody that is a lifelong learner. I've learned a lot from you, just sitting down and learning from you and even thinking about things in my own backyard that I should be taking advantage of here in New York City. So perspective always helps to drive the outcome. At the beginning of the call, you and I were talking about the book behind me, Cheaper, Better, Faster by Tom Steyer, somebody I admire quite significantly. I think he's done a good job of kind of painting the picture. When I answer this question, I'm going to answer it in a couple of ways. So first and foremost, from the lens of people that I follow and I talk to, one of them would be, I always go back to something that Eric Schmidt talks about, the former CEO of Google. He talks about one of the best skills that people of all ages, but especially when you're younger, you should be looking to hone is really systems thinking and critical problem solving. What does that mean? These are holistic approaches to understanding complex systems. So if you can take a step back to see the broader context in which challenges arise and stresses that effective problem solving, requires addressing not just in the visible symptoms of a problem, but deeper systemic causes that are there. So I think that the first thing is, as an example, core concepts around visual tools like causal loop diagrams are really great. Interactive activities and group discussions and role playing, problem solving simulations, structured frameworks around 5 whys and fishbone diagrams. These are things we grew up doing. I'm a Lean Six Sigma. But the importance of leveraging data and technology to understand systems dramatically. You look at Google Maps and Earth to create broader awareness and engage with complex problems like climate change. This is what's going to help the next generation and all of us visualize and analyze issues within their systemic context. So that's the first thing. And Outside of that, ethics and value-based leadership is critical. This falls with the whole decision-making framework and CSR frameworks. Ethics is everything. And in this space, if you bring projects that aren't ethical to the table, you risk isolating not only key partners and investors, but the whole market. It brings the market down. Policy, advocacy, and collaboration more important than ever. How do I did a talk on NASDAQ television recently on the role of public-private partnerships, and I happen to work on, through Terminal 1, the largest in the country. Understanding how these institutions come together for social impact is critical. And the last thing, Harsha, I'd highlight, and I know enough from the product work we do at Grain, but I would encourage students to spend time studying Python. From what I've seen and talking with some of the best entrepreneurs in the world, Python equips individuals with critical skills that they're going to be able to leverage across industries and projects. And it's really becoming essential in today's tech-driven world. And I think that if you want to be versatile and accessible around problem solving, it's got really great simplicity and flexibility that's going to enable innovation. It doesn't matter if you're in tech, finance, healthcare, beyond. If these tools are there, they're easy to get access to, and they're going to help for tackling some of these major complex challenges like climate change of the future. And as we all know, I keep saying this, I'm very fanatical about starting smart. That's the goal of Grain. And we are trying to drive that in everything we do. And I think that's the beauty of what you and your team are doing. And I really commend CSR and all of you and your work, because this is setting us up to be successful. And this is the future workforce that organizations like ours and Schneider Electric of all sizes depend on to be successful.
Thank you so much for sharing the subject. Now, it actually enlightens me that even I should study some of them, including Python. So thank you so much for mentioning that. It has been wonderful talking to you and very insightful and intriguing. We are very excited to see the growth of Grain ecosystem, and hope it grows multifold and multi-geographies in times to come.
Thank you. I look forward to partnering and continuing these